Just sign it, Mother. It's for the best. Claire's voice was a sugary whisper in my ear, the same tone she used as a little girl when she wanted the biggest slice of cake. But now, at 38, her hand was pressing mine onto a ballpoint pen, while her husband, Richard, held my wrist with a grip that made the old bones ache. We were in the middle of a busy bank, people all around us just living their Tuesday, completely unaware of the quiet nightmare happening at this little table. It's just a formality, Mom. A simple transfer to help us get a few things organized. But I knew better. I'd seen the paperwork when they thought I wasn't looking. It wasn't a simple transfer. It was everything. My $60,000 in life savings. The only thing I had left after my dear husband George passed away 2 years ago. The bank's air conditioner was humming, but a wave of hot panic washed over me. The bright lights overhead seemed to buzz louder, and the sound of a distant coin machine felt like a hammer inside my skull. Claire was smiling, a perfect calm smile for anyone who might be watching, as if we were just a happy family sorting out our finances. Richard smiled too, but his fingers were a cold, hard clamp on my wrist. "Come on, Eleanor," he breathed, his voice low and urgent. "Let's not make a scene." His breath was stale, a mix of coffee and something sour. "Think about Sophie. Think about all the things we do for you. All the things they did for me." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. I was the one who had paid for Claire's entire education. I was the one who handed them the down payment for their beautiful house. I was the one who cleared Richard's credit card debt when his business venture failed a few years ago. $25,000 they swore they'd pay back. Now they were here, trying to take the very last of it. My security. The money George and I had scrimped and saved for over 45 years of marriage. My hand was shaking so much I could barely hold the pen. The blue ink on the signature line looked like a deep, dark ocean waiting to swallow me whole. One little scribble and it would all be gone. One signature, and I'd be completely dependent on them. Claire leaned in again, her expensive perfume making me feel sick. "Mother, trust me. It's for your own good. A woman your age shouldn't have to worry about managing all this money." Her words were like sweet poison, everyone designed to make me feel old and helpless. I looked around, my eyes begging for someone to notice. The young teller behind the counter was laughing with a customer. A security guard was looking at his phone near the door. Nobody saw a thing. Nobody could see that I was being robbed right out in the open, with smiles and gentle whispers. Richard squeezed my wrist harder, and a little whimper escaped my lips. "Quiet," he hissed, his smile never leaving his face. "We wouldn't want to upset anybody, would we?" His eyes were like chips of cold stone, and in that moment, I knew he was capable of anything. And Claire, my daughter, my own flesh and blood, just sat there, watching her husband hurt me, and did absolutely nothing. The big clock on the wall said it was 2:30 in the afternoon. Just a normal Tuesday that had turned into the worst day of my life. But to really understand how I got to this point, you need to hear the whole story. If you want to know what happened next, make sure you follow my channel, because I'm about to tell you everything. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 70 years old. And for my entire life, I have been the woman who could never say no. The woman who gave and gave and gave, always putting her family, especially Claire, first. I remember the day she was born like it was yesterday. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, and after a long and difficult labor, there she was, so tiny and perfect, with a little tuft of blonde hair just like her father's. I held her in my arms and I made a promise to her, and to myself, that she would have everything I never did, that she would always be loved, always be supported, always be protected. I kept that promise for 38 years. But now I see that maybe I kept it a little too well. When Claire was 6, she wanted a pony for her birthday. A real pony. Of course, we couldn't afford that, but George and I worked overtime for 3 months to buy her the most beautiful, expensive rocking horse in the entire state of Ohio. It cost $300, which was like $1 million to us back then, but her squeal of delight made it all worth it. When she was 16, she just had to go on the school trip to France. It was $2,000. I took my mother's wedding ring, the only nice piece of jewelry I owned, and I sold it. When she graduated high school, she was accepted into a good state university, but she had her heart set on a private liberal arts college. "Mom, all my friends are going there," she'd cried, her eyes welling up with those perfect strategic tears. "I'll be so embarrassed." The tuition was $35,000 a year, money we absolutely did not have. George and I refinanced our little house, the house we had worked our whole lives to pay off. For 4 years, I took on extra cleaning jobs in the evenings, my hands raw from bleach and my back screaming in protest, all so Claire could have that prestigious piece of paper. She graduated with a degree in art history, and I was so proud I thought my heart would burst. I thought my job was done. I thought I could finally relax. But Claire's plans were just getting started. At 24, she met Richard at an art gallery opening. He was charming, I'll give him that. But there was a hardness in his eyes I never trusted, a way of looking at things and people, as if he was always calculating their value. The first time I met him, he didn't ask about my health or my life. He asked what my husband did for a living and if our house was big. I should have listened to that little warning bell in my head. Their wedding cost $40,000. "Mom, it's my one special day," Claire had said, her voice trembling. "I just want it to be a fairy tale." I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her that her father's health was starting to fail, that the doctor's bills were piling up. But she looked so hopeful, so radiant, that the word no just wouldn't come out. We drained our savings account. The wedding was a fairy tale, I have to admit. Claire looked like a queen in her designer gown. Richard smiled for the cameras, but I saw him, more than once, looking over the guest list, sizing people up. After the honeymoon to Hawaii, another $6,000 we put on our credit card because how could they not have a honeymoon? They moved into a trendy downtown apartment. For about a year, I breathed a sigh of relief. I thought, finally, they're on their own. But then the phone calls began. "Mom, the dishwasher is broken." "Mom, the car needs new tires." "Mom, Richard's commission check is late and we're short on rent." It was never a big amount at first. $300 here, $500 there. But it added up, like a slow leak draining my peace of mind. 3 years into the marriage, they decided they wanted to buy a house in the suburbs. "It's for the future, Mom. A place for your grandchild to grow up." A grandchild. That was the first time she'd mentioned it. The house they wanted was $300,000, and they needed $60,000 for the down payment. They didn't have a penny saved, naturally. Their credit was shot, naturally. "Could you help us, Mom? We'll pay you back, I swear. Every single penny." It was the biggest lie she ever told me. I cashed in some of the retirement bonds George and I had been carefully collecting for 30 years. Every single one of them represented a vacation we didn't take, a new car we didn't buy, a little comfort we denied ourselves. But I gave it to them. I remember sitting in the financial advisor's office, my hand shaking as I signed the papers. He warned me about the tax penalties, the chunk of money I would lose just for accessing it early. "Are you certain about this, Mrs. Vance?" he asked, his voice full of concern. I told him I was. It was for my daughter. It was for her happiness. I walked over to their apartment with the cashier's check in my purse, feeling like I had saved the day. Claire wept when she saw it. Tears of joy, I thought at the time. "You are the best mother in the entire world," she sobbed, hugging me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I promise, Mom. I'll make it up to you." Richard gave me a quick, stiff hug. "Thanks, Eleanor," he'd said. "You're a lifesaver." They bought the house. It was lovely, with a big yard and a beautiful kitchen. They invited me over for the housewarming party, and I felt a surge of pride seeing them so settled. My sacrifice was worth it, but the requests for money didn't stop. In fact, they got bigger. Mom, we need to furnish the living room. We can't have guests over with just a card table. $15,000 for designer sofas. Mom, the yard needs a privacy fence. The neighbors are so nosy. $5,000 for a white picket fence. Mom, we want to put in a new bathroom. The old one is so dated. $12,000 for Italian tile. Every time I tried to say no, every time I mentioned that I had my own bills, Claire knew just what to say. Mom, I thought you wanted us to be happy. I thought you wanted your granddaughter to have a nice home. And there it was. Sophie, my granddaughter, the absolute joy of my life, became the ultimate weapon in Claire's arsenal. Sophie was born when Claire was 30. From the moment I first held that tiny little bundle, I was completely smitten. She had her grandfather's gentle eyes and a laugh that could chase away any storm clouds. But more than that, she had a sweetness that her mother seemed to have misplaced along the way. When Sophie would visit, she'd bring me little dandelions she'd picked from the yard, her little hands carefully arranging them in a glass of water for me. "These are sunshine flowers, Grandma," she'd say, "because you're my sunshine." It was impossible to deny anything that was for Sophie. Gymnastics lessons, $250 a month. Art camp, $1,500 for the summer. A special birthday party with a real pony, $1,000. Sophie has a real talent, Mom. It would be a crime to let it go to waste just because of money. All the while, my own financial world was crumbling. George had developed heart problems. His medication was astronomical, hundreds of dollars a month that our insurance barely touched. He needed to see specialists, have regular tests, and eat a special low-sodium diet that was twice as expensive. I started working part-time at the local library, reshelving books until my feet throbbed, just to make ends meet. My sister, Margaret, would come over and shake her head. "Eleanor, why don't you ask Claire for a little help? You've given them a fortune over the years. Surely they can help with Dad's medical bills." But I couldn't. I was the mother. It was my job to provide, to be the strong one, to hold everything together. George passed away on a rainy Thursday morning, 2 years after his diagnosis. I was holding his hand. I felt his last, gentle breath, and a part of my own heart went with him. We had been married for 45 years. He was my rock, my best friend, the one who always understood my complicated love for our daughter. After the funeral, when everyone had gone home, I sat in the quiet of our little house and faced the truth. I was broke. The medical bills, on top of everything I'd given to Claire, had wiped us out. George's life insurance policy paid out $60,000. It was the only money I had in the world, the only thing standing between me and poverty for the rest of my days. I put it in a high-yield savings account, and I made a promise to George's memory. I was going to be smart. I was going to make it last. I was finally going to learn to say no. But Claire and Richard had other ideas. 6 months after the funeral, Richard was laid off from his marketing job. "It was his horrible boss," Claire cried over the phone. "He was totally jealous of Richard's talent. Now we can't make the mortgage payment. They're going to foreclose, Mom. Sophie will be homeless. She'll have to leave all her friends." They asked for $25,000. Just a loan, to get us through until Richard finds something new. 6 months tops. We'll pay it back with interest, I swear on Sophie's life. It was almost half of everything I had. But the image of my little Sophie being forced out of her home was more than I could bear. I gave them the money. Richard got a new, better-paying job 2 months later, but the repayment never came. Every time I brought it up, there was a new excuse. "We're still catching up on bills, Mom." The car needed a new transmission. Sophie had to get braces and the dental plan didn't cover it. And now, here I was, back in a bank, watching them try to take the last $35,000 I had to my name. My daughter, the baby I had rocked to sleep, was sitting there with her greedy husband, smiling sweetly as they tried to push me into utter destitution. Mr. Davis, the bank manager, a kind man with silver hair, walked toward our table. His smile was professional, but his eyes were sharp. "Is everything all right over here? Anything I can assist with?" His presence was like a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. This was it. This was my one and only chance. My heart was pounding like a drum against my ribs. My hand, still holding the pen, fumbled for a deposit slip on the table. On the back, I scrawled 2 words. "Help me." I folded the tiny piece of paper, and when Claire and Richard were busy looking at the transfer form, I slid it across the table toward him. Mr. Davis picked it up, thinking it was trash. He started to crumple it, but then he saw the writing. I watched his eyes scan the words, and I saw them go wide. His professional mask dropped for just a second, replaced by genuine shock and alarm. For a moment that stretched into an eternity, he looked at me, really looked at me, and I knew. He understood. Without a word, he gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. He then calmly pressed a small, discreet button on the underside of his desk. The silent alarm, a wave of relief so powerful it almost made me cry, washed over me. Help was on its way. The confrontation was terrifying. Mr. Davis returned, flanked by 2 security guards who were trying their best to look casual. Claire and Richard were still focused on the documents, like 2 vultures planning to divide a feast. "Excuse me," Mr. Davis said, his voice calm but carrying an undeniable authority. "I'm afraid there's an issue with this account that I need to clarify." Richard looked up, a flicker of irritation in his eyes. "What kind of issue? Everything is perfectly fine. Mrs. Vance is simply gifting some money to her daughter. It's a family matter." His hand was still on my wrist, a constant, painful reminder of his control. "I appreciate that," Mr. Davis replied smoothly. "But our bank has strict protocols to protect our senior clients from potential financial pressure. It's a legal requirement." He looked directly at me, his eyes full of kindness. "Mrs. Vance, would you be so kind as to join me in my office for a moment? It's just a standard verification process for a transfer of this size." Claire went rigid. "Oh, that's not necessary at all. My mother is perfectly fine, aren't you, Mom?" Her smile was stretched so tight I thought it might crack. "We can sort it all out right here. We don't want to be a bother." But Mr. Davis was already on his feet, holding his hand out to me. "It is bank policy, ma'am. Non-negotiable." The guards took a step closer to our table. "It will only take 5 minutes." I stood up on shaky legs. For the first time that afternoon, Richard had to let go of my wrist. Claire immediately grabbed my other hand. "Mother, don't be difficult. Just sign the paper and we can go home. Sophie is expecting us for dinner." She said Sophie's name like it was a magic word, a key that she thought could unlock my compliance. "I'll just be a minute," I mumbled, not looking at her. I knew if I looked into her eyes, I might crumble. I might give in again, just like I always did. Mr. Davis's office was quiet and safe. He closed the door and offered me a chair and a glass of water. "Mrs. Vance," he said gently, "please, tell me what is happening." And it all came pouring out, a lifetime of manipulation, of financial demands, of guilt and broken promises. I told him about the college tuition, the wedding, the house, the constant stream of emergencies. I told him how Richard had bruised my wrist, how Claire used my love for Sophie as a weapon. I told him that the money they were trying to take was all I had left in the world. He listened patiently, his expression growing more and more serious. When I finally ran out of words, he let out a long sigh. "Ma'am, what you are describing is a textbook case of elder financial abuse. What your daughter and her husband are doing is against the law." Against the law. The words hung in the air. For all these years, I just thought it was my duty as a mother. It had never once occurred to me that there was a name for it, that it was a crime. "What do I do?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. "She's my only child. I don't want her to go to jail, but I can't live like this anymore." Mr. Davis leaned forward, his voice firm but kind. First, we are not going to allow this transfer to happen. Second, I am going to put a permanent security alert on all of your accounts. No one but you will be able to access your money, and you will need to provide 2 forms of ID for any large withdrawal. Third, I'm going to give you the contact information for Adult Protective Services and a good elder law attorney. He paused, looking at me intently. But the most important step has to come from you, Eleanor. Are you ready to say no? Was I ready? My whole life, my entire identity, was built on being the woman who said yes. The giver. The rescuer. If I wasn't that person, who was I? I thought of George and how he had worked his fingers to the bone for our family. I thought of all the sacrifices, all the years of putting myself last. And then I thought of Sophie, my sweet Sophie, growing up in a house where she was learning that love could be used as leverage, that grandparents were just a source of cash. Yes, I said, and my own voice surprised me. It was quiet, but it was steady. I'm ready. Mr. Davis smiled. Good. We're going to get through this. As he made the necessary calls, I looked out his office window. I could see Claire pacing in the bank lobby, talking frantically on her cell phone. Richard sat stiffly in a chair, his arms crossed, his face like a thundercloud. They knew. They knew they had lost. And for the first time in so long, I didn't feel a shred of guilt. I felt a flicker of something else. Something that felt like power. He handed me a folder with all the information. This is the incident report we filed. This is the number for the helpline. And this, he said, handing me his business card, is my personal cell number. If they threaten you or harass you in any way, you call me. Day or night. I took the papers. My hands weren't shaking anymore. What do I say to them? You tell them the truth, Mr. Davis said. You tell them that you have decided to keep your money for your own future. You don't owe them any other explanation. It's your money, Eleanor. You earned it. You have every right to it. It was time. Time to face my daughter. Time to find the voice I had lost so many years ago. We walked out of the office together. Claire rushed over, her face a mask of anxiety and anger. What was that all about, Mother? You've made us late. I looked at this woman, my daughter, who had built a life of comfort on my inability to refuse her. And for the first time in 38 years, I said the 2 words that would change everything between us forever. I said no. The silence in the bank lobby was suddenly deafening. Claire stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief, as if I'd just spoken in a foreign language. What? What do you mean you said no? She stammered, trying to keep her voice low. Mom, we discussed this. It's for the house. No, Claire, I said, and the word felt solid, real. It's my money, my retirement, and I am not giving it to you. Richard shot up from his chair, his face turning a blotchy red. Now listen here, Eleanor, he started, taking a step toward me. But one of the security guards subtly moved to stand between us. Don't be difficult. What is an old woman like you going to do with all that money anyway? It's better off invested with us, for the family's future. For the family? I repeated, and a small bitter laugh escaped me. You mean like the $60,000 I gave you for your down payment? Or the $25,000 I gave you when you were out of work? How much of that investment have I seen a return on, Richard? His face hardened. The charming mask was gone, revealing the cold, calculating man I always knew was underneath. Those were gifts, he snarled. You were happy to give them. I was a fool to give them, I corrected him. And you promised to pay me back. You both promised. Claire started to cry then, not the heartbreaking sobs of a child, but the practiced theatrical tears of a performer. Mother, how can you do this to us? After everything, after all our love. Love? The word felt sharp in my mouth. You call this love? Having your husband bruise my arm? Lying to me to try and steal the last penny I have to my name? That's not love, Claire. I don't know what it is, but it's not love. People were starting to stare. An elderly man in line turned to look. A young woman paused from texting on her phone. Claire noticed the attention and her voice dropped to a desperate whisper. Okay. Don't give us everything. Just give us 10,000. We just need 10,000 to get through a rough patch. What rough patch, Claire? I asked, genuinely curious. Richard has a good job. You live in a beautiful house. What is the emergency that requires my life savings? She faltered, her eyes darting around. And in that moment, I saw it all with perfect clarity. There was no emergency. There never was. There was just a lifestyle they couldn't afford, built on the foundation of my endless support. You are 38 years old, I said, my voice steady. Your husband is 42. You are educated, healthy adults. It is time you learn to live within your means. What about Sophie? Richard spat, playing his trump card. What about your granddaughter? Are you really going to let her suffer just because you've suddenly decided to be selfish? Selfish. That was the word I had feared my entire life. I had sacrificed everything, my time, my money, my own dreams, so that no one could ever call me selfish. But standing there in that cold bank lobby, I had a revelation. Taking care of myself wasn't selfish. It was survival. Sophie is not going to suffer, I said firmly. You are her parents. It is your job to provide for her, just like millions of other parents do every single day. But you will not use her to manipulate me anymore. Mr. Davis stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Mrs. Vance has made her decision, and your continued presence is causing a disturbance. She's my mother, Claire shrieked. I have a right to speak to her. Not on bank property when you are harassing her, Mr. Davis said, his voice leaving no room for argument. The guards will escort you out. Claire looked at me then, and the expression on her face was something I had never seen before. It wasn't sadness or disappointment. It was pure, cold hatred. Fine, Mother, she said, her voice dripping with venom. Have it your way, but don't come calling me when you're old and lonely and there's no one to take care of you. And don't expect us to help when you fall and break a hip, Richard added. We won't be your retirement plan. Their threats were meant to terrify me, to paint a picture of a bleak and lonely future. And for a second, it worked. A shiver of fear went through me. What if they were right? What if I was making a terrible mistake? But then I remembered something George used to say. Eleanor, he'd told me once, the biggest weapon a bully has is fear of the future. Don't let them make you afraid of what might happen. You just handle what is happening right now. I understand, I told Claire, my voice calm. If that is your choice, I will accept it, but I will not be threatened into changing my mind. The guards gestured toward the door. Let's go, folks. Claire grabbed her purse, her movements sharp and angry. This isn't over, she hissed. We'll talk about this at home, away from all these people who are poisoning your mind. No, I said, and the word felt like a shield. We will not talk about this at home. We will not talk about this again until you are ready to respect my decision. They left, Richard's hand possessively on Claire's back, whispering furiously in her ear. I watched them go, two people walking out of my life, taking years of toxic obligation with them. When the glass doors swung shut behind them, my legs finally gave out and I sank into one of the lobby chairs. I was shaking, not with fear, but with the aftershock of a battle I never thought I'd have the courage to fight. I had said no. I had chosen myself. Mr. Davis came and sat beside me. How are you feeling? He asked. I took a deep breath. Terrified, I admitted, but also free. The days that followed were a quiet, lonely hell. I sat in the house that was once full of memories and now just felt empty. I looked at the photos on the mantelpiece, Claire's graduation, her wedding, Sophie's first birthday, and I wondered when I had lost myself. When did I stop being Eleanor and become just a walking, talking checkbook? The phone calls started that evening, Claire's name flashing on the screen every hour. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. Mom, I know you're upset, but we have to talk. Mom, Sophie won't stop crying. She keeps asking for you. Mom, Richard wants to apologize. He was just stressed out. Each message was a carefully crafted dart of guilt, aimed right at my heart. On the third day, they showed up at my house. I saw them through the peephole. Claire, Richard, and in the middle, holding both their hands, was Sophie. My sweet granddaughter, holding a little drawing for me. My heart broke. I wanted to throw the door open and hug her, but I knew what they were doing. They were using her as a shield, as a battering ram to break down my defenses. I didn't open the door. They rang the bell for what felt like an eternity. Then they started knocking. Mom, I know you're home. Please, just let us talk. I could hear the desperation in Claire's voice. Then I heard Sophie's tiny voice. Grandma, why won't you open the door? Are you mad at me? That almost broke me. I backed away from the door, went into my bedroom, and turned on the radio, trying to drown them out. After an hour, they were gone. That night, my sister Margaret called. Eleanor, Claire called me. She's worried sick. She says you're not well, that the people at the bank confused you. Is that what she told you? I asked, my voice flat. Did she also tell you that her husband grabbed me so hard he left bruises on my arm? Did she tell you I had to pass a note to the manager like a prisoner asking for help? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. He physically hurt you? Yes, he did. And Claire stood by and watched. Margaret, they have taken more than $100,000 from me over the last decade. They were trying to take the last of it. But Ellie, she said gently, she's your daughter. That's what family does. We help each other. There's a difference between helping and being bled dry, I told her. This wasn't help. This was theft. After I hung up, I realized how alone I truly was. Even the people who loved me couldn't see the years of subtle manipulation that had led to this. A few days later, Sophie showed up at my door. Alone. She had ridden her little pink bicycle all the way from her house. This time, I opened the door. She was just a child. She wasn't to blame for her parents' greed. Hi, Grandma, she said, her smile as bright as ever. Mommy says you're sick, but you don't look sick. I knelt down and hugged her, breathing in the sweet smell of her hair. I'm not sick, sweetheart. Grandma's just having some quiet time. But why won't you see us? Mommy cries all the time now. Oh, honey, I said, my heart aching. Sometimes grown-ups have problems that are hard to fix. But you must always know that Grandma loves you more than all the stars in the sky. She seemed to accept that. We spent the afternoon making cookies, and for a little while, everything felt normal. But just before she left, she turned to me with her big, serious eyes. Grandma, you're still going to buy me the new leotard for my gymnastics show, right? Mommy said she can't afford it. And there it was. Even at 7 years old, the lesson had been learned. Grandma's love was transactional. I knelt down in front of her again. Sophie, let me ask you a question. Do you love me because I buy you things? Or do you love me just because I'm your grandma? She looked confused. I love you because you're my grandma, she said. But the presents are nice too. Mommy says you're the best grandma because you always get us what we need. In that moment, I saw the true damage I had done. I hadn't just enabled my daughter. I had been teaching my granddaughter that love had a price tag. Sweetheart, I said, taking her little hands in mine. I want you to learn something very important. Real love doesn't cost anything. I will always love you, whether I buy you a new leotard or not. The love is the real gift. She nodded, but I wasn't sure she understood. When Claire's car pulled up, she didn't even get out. She just laid on the horn, a single angry blast. Sophie ran out, and I watched my daughter drive away without a single glance in my direction. That night, I knew I had lost my daughter, at least for now. But I also knew that for the first time in a very long time, I was starting to find myself. A week later, I had a visitor. A young woman was at my door, and for a moment, I thought she was a teenage Claire. "Mrs. Vance?" she asked. "I'm Emily. I'm Margaret's granddaughter. My grandma told me what happened, and she thought maybe I could talk to you." We sat in my living room, and this bright, kind young woman told me a story that was eerily similar to my own. She told me about her own father, who had struggled with a gambling problem and had manipulated his family for years. "It's the hardest thing in the world, setting a boundary with a parent," she said, "because all your life, you're taught to honor them, to please them. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do for them, and for yourself, is to say no." She told me about a support group she attended for families of people with addictive behaviors. "It's not just for drugs or alcohol," she explained. "It's for any kind of toxic family dynamic. It helped me realize I wasn't alone, and that I wasn't crazy." Her visit was like a window opening in a stuffy room. The following Tuesday, I drove to the community center and walked into that support group meeting. I sat in a circle with a dozen other people, men and women, young and old, and I listened. I heard a man talk about his brother who constantly demanded money. I heard a woman cry as she described her mother's manipulative guilt trips. And when it was my turn, I told my story. And instead of judgment, I found nods of understanding. I found compassion. I found a community. For the next 2 years, I rebuilt my life, piece by piece. I sold the big family house, which was full of too many ghosts, and bought a small, sunny condo just for me. I started taking a watercolor class, something I had always wanted to do. I volunteered at the library, the same one where I used to work extra shifts, but now I did it for the love of books. My friendship with my great-niece Emily blossomed. We had lunch every week. She valued my stories, my advice, my company, not my bank account. I wrote to Sophie every single month. I sent letters to her school hoping she would get them. I told her I loved her, that I missed her, and that none of this was her fault. I never heard back, but I kept writing. Claire and Richard disappeared from my life. I heard through my sister that they had to sell their big house and move to a smaller one. Richard had to get a second job. They were struggling, but they were managing. They were finally being forced to be adults. Then, one Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. Standing on my porch was a tall, lanky 11-year-old with familiar green eyes. It was Sophie. "Hi, Grandma," she said, her voice a little shaky. "Can I come in?" She told me she had found my letters, all of them. Claire had hidden them in a box in her closet. "I've been listening, Grandma," she said, her voice older than her years. "I hear them fighting about money all the time. I hear them say your name. And Mommy always says you abandoned us, but your letters said you still loved me." We sat on my little balcony for hours. I told her the truth in a way an 11-year-old could understand. I told her that sometimes love gets tangled up with money, and it can make people sick. I told her that I had to step away to get healthy again and to protect myself. She listened and she nodded, and then she said something that made me cry. "I get it, Grandma, and when I'm old enough, when I can drive myself, I want to come see you all the time. Not for presents, just for you." And in that moment, I knew that everything I had gone through, all the pain and the heartache, had been worth it. I had broken the cycle. I had shown my granddaughter that a woman's worth isn't measured by what she can give away, but by the love and respect she keeps for herself. I know my story is a hard one to hear, but I tell it every day because I know there are others out there, just like me. If my story touched your heart, please make sure to follow and click the notification bell so you don't miss the new story I have for you tomorrow. And if you want to hear another story that will truly surprise you, Click on one of the videos you see on the screen now. You won't be disappointed.